You wake up one morning feeling fired up. You've watched a video, read a quote, maybe listened to a song that made you believe you can conquer the world. For a moment, you feel unstoppable. But then reality kicks in. The bills, the deadlines, the exhaustion, the noise of life, it all hits you. That fire that burns so bright in the morning, it starts to fade by noon. By the end of the day, you're back where you started. And you wonder what happened to all that motivation. Here's the truth: motivation won't save you. It was never meant to. Motivation is like a spark. It ignites quickly, burns bright, and then disappears if there's nothing to fuel it. You can't build a life, a business, a legacy, or a transformation on something that fades the moment life gets uncomfortable. You don't need another motivational high. You need discipline. You need commitment. You need to make a decision that goes deeper than emotion, because motivation depends on how you feel, and feelings are unreliable. Discipline depends on what you decide, and decisions define your destiny. You see, motivation whispers, I'll do it when I feel ready. Discipline says, I'll do it whether I feel ready or not. Motivation shows up when it's easy. Discipline shows up when it's pouring rain, when you're tired, when you're doubting yourself, when no one is clapping, when no one sees the grind. Think about it. Everyone's motivated when they start. The gym is full in January. The journals are full of goals. The vision boards look amazing. But fast forward a few months, how many people are still showing up? How many are still grinding when the excitement fades, when the results aren't instant, when the process hurts? That's where the separation happens. The winners aren't the ones who felt the most inspired. They're the ones who kept moving long after the inspiration was gone. The ones who made showing up non-negotiable. The ones who didn't wait for motivation to come back. They built systems, routines, habits that carried them forward when willpower ran dry. Motivation is emotion-driven, but mastery is action-driven. If you only act when you feel good, you'll never reach your potential. The greatest growth happens when you do the work you don't feel like doing, when you push through resistance. When you fight the voice in your head that says, not today, that's where you meet your power. The secret isn't to stay motivated, it's to stay consistent. Motivation gives you the spark, but consistency builds the fire, and that fire is what turns goals into reality. It's what transforms someday into today. It's what takes an ordinary life and makes it extraordinary. You can't wait for perfect conditions because they'll never come. You can't wait to feel ready because you never will. You act first and the feeling follows. The momentum builds after the motion begins. You don't need a reason to start. You need a reason to continue. Every champion, every leader, every success story you admire, they've all had days they didn't feel like showing up, but they did it anyway. They built habits that worked when motivation didn't. They learned that progress isn't made in the moments of hype. It's made in the quiet moments when no one's watching, when the only voice that matters is the one that says, keep going. If you want to change your life, stop chasing motivation and start chasing mastery. Stop asking, how do I stay motivated? And start asking, how do I stay disciplined when I'm not? Because discipline doesn't care about your mood. It only cares about your movement. Here's the shift. Stop making decisions based on how you feel right now and start making them based on who you want to become. The person you want to be, the one with confidence, with results, with peace, already exists on the other side of discipline. But you'll never meet that version of yourself if you keep quitting when motivation fades. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you're rewriting your identity. You're proving to yourself that you don't need to feel inspired to be unstoppable. You just need to decide that no matter what happens, you'll keep showing up. Motivation might start the race, but discipline finishes it. Motivation might light the match, but discipline keeps the fire alive. Motivation might make you dream, but discipline makes you do. And once you understand that, you'll never depend on motivation again. You'll become the kind of person who creates results no matter what the world throws at you, because you'll realize you don't need saving. You need structure, focus, resilience, and the relentless decision to never stop moving forward. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to start. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is permanent. Motivation is like the wind. It comes and goes. One day, it pushes you forward with energy, excitement, and passion. The next day, it's gone, leaving you standing still, wondering where that spark went. That's because motivation is emotional. It's born from a feeling, a rush, an idea that lights you up for a moment. But feelings are fleeting. They shift with your environment, your energy, your mood, your circumstances. One bad day, one setback, one discouraging comment, and that motivation that once felt unstoppable can disappear in an instant. That's why if you rely on motivation alone, you'll always be inconsistent. You'll start strong, but you won't finish. You'll be passionate for a season, but you'll quit when it gets hard. You'll get caught in a cycle of starting over and over again, thinking something's wrong with you, when in reality, nothing's wrong. You're just depending on something that was never built to last. Discipline, on the other hand, is the foundation that doesn't move. It's not emotional. It's not about feeling ready. It's about making a decision and sticking to it no matter what. Discipline is what keeps you going when the motivation fades, when the excitement wears off, when the results take longer than you thought. Discipline is the quiet force that carries you through the moments when your emotions are screaming for comfort, for rest, for excuses. It's what separates the dreamers from the doers. Think about it. Anyone can be motivated in the beginning. It's easy to set goals when you're inspired. It's easy to make promises to yourself when you're in the right mood. But when life gets real, when challenges appear, when that energy fades, most people stop. That's why success doesn't belong to the most motivated. It belongs to the most disciplined. The people who do what needs to be done even when they don't feel like it. The people who keep showing up when no one's watching. The people who don't rely on emotion. They rely on standards. Discipline is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. The first time you push yourself to do something you don't feel like doing, it's hard. Your mind fights back. It looks for comfort. But when you do it anyway, you prove to yourself that your feelings don't control you. You control them. And every time you do that, you build trust with yourself. You build integrity. You start becoming the kind of person who follows through. That's where real confidence comes from. Not from hype, not from motivation, but from keeping your promises to yourself over and over again. Motivation might get you started on day 1, but discipline is what makes you show up on day 100, on day 1000, on the days when nothing feels right. It's what transforms average into unstoppable. When you're disciplined, you don't wait for the right conditions, you create them. You don't wait for inspiration, you build systems that keep you accountable. You don't wake up asking, do I feel like it today? You wake up saying, it doesn't matter how I feel, I'm doing it anyway. Well, the world rewards consistency, not intensity. Anyone can push hard for a moment, but few can stay steady when it's boring, repetitive, or uncomfortable. That's what makes discipline powerful. It's not emotional, it's mechanical. It's a decision turned into a pattern turned into a lifestyle. Motivation fades, but habits stay. When you operate from discipline, you don't rely on mood swings, you rely on structure. You don't wait for energy, you move and let energy catch up. Discipline is the bridge between goals and results. It's the invisible force that transforms dreams into achievements. People talk about wanting freedom, financial freedom, emotional freedom, time freedom. But the paradox is that true freedom only comes from discipline. When you discipline your body, you gain health. When you discipline your mind, you gain clarity. When you discipline your time, you gain opportunity. Freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you feel like. It comes from mastering what you must do, even when you don't feel like it. When you're motivated, you act from emotion. When you're disciplined, you act from identity. Motivation asks, what do I want right now? Discipline asks, who am I becoming? One is temporary pleasure, the other is long-term fulfillment. The person who wins in life isn't the one who's motivated today, it's the one who's consistent every day. Because discipline doesn't just create results, it shapes character, it builds resilience. It teaches you how to keep moving when everything in you wants to stop. Every successful person you see, athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders, artists, they all have one thing in common: they don't depend on motivation. They've built systems that make action automatic. They've trained their minds to move before their feelings catch up. They understand that success isn't about doing what's easy. It's about doing what's necessary. They've mastered the boring, the repetitive, the unseen, because that's where greatness is forged. Not in moments of hype, but in moments of discipline. Motivation is a spark, but discipline is the fire. Motivation fades when obstacles come, but discipline grows stronger because of them. Motivation says, I'll do it when I feel ready. Discipline says, I'll do it until it's done. Motivation might help you dream, but discipline helps you build. One gives you a high, the other gives you results. One is loud, the other is silent. One inspires, the other endures. When you rely on motivation, your progress will always depend on your mood. When you live by discipline, your progress depends on your commitment. And that's the difference between those who wish and those who achieve. The ones who make it happen don't wait for motivation to strike. They've built habits that make quitting impossible. They've trained themselves to do what they said they would do no matter what. They don't rely on temporary energy. They rely on unbreakable standards. Motivation can change your day. Discipline can change your life. Motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a choice. Motivation is a burst of energy. Discipline is a lifestyle. Motivation might push you for a moment, but discipline carries you for a lifetime. Feelings don't create success. Decisions do. Feelings are unpredictable. They rise and fall like waves. One moment you feel confident, the next you feel uncertain. One day you feel unstoppable, the next you can barely move. If you build your life around feelings, you'll always live in chaos because feelings are reactive. They respond to your circumstances, your energy, your mood, and even the people around you. But success requires stability. It requires something stronger than emotion. It requires decision. A decision is a commitment to a direction. No matter how you feel in the moment, it's saying, this is what I'm doing and nothing will stop me. That's the kind of power that creates change, that builds momentum, that rewires your entire identity. When you make a decision, you cut off every other option. That's what the word means. To decide is to eliminate alternatives. You stop entertaining excuses. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting for permission. You decide that you're going to do it, and you act as if it's already done. Feelings will tell you to slow down, to quit, to rest in comfort, to protect yourself from failure. But a decision will remind you of your purpose, your promise, your standard. When you act from emotion, you move in circles. When you act from decision, you move in direction. Most people never reach their potential because they're waiting to feel ready. They wait for confidence before they act, for clarity before they move, for passion before they commit. But waiting to feel ready is the same as waiting forever because those feelings never come first. They're created by action. The moment you decide and start moving, your emotions begin to shift to match your motion. You build belief through action, not before it. Every small decision to act despite fear builds courage. Every decision to move despite doubt builds confidence. Every decision to stay consistent builds momentum. That's how success is born, not from waiting to feel good, but from deciding to do good work regardless of how you feel. Feelings change with circumstances, but decisions remain steady through them. If you live by emotion, every obstacle feels like a reason to stop. You get rejected and you lose confidence. You fail and you lose motivation. You face criticism and you question your worth. But when you live by decision, none of that stops you. You don't ask, do I feel like it? You ask, is it aligned with who I said I'd be? That's the shift. You move from reacting to life to creating life. You move from being ruled by emotions to mastering them. Decisions don't just create direction, they create identity. Every time you decide to follow through, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. When you decide to wake up early, to train, to study, to work, to push through discomfort, you're building evidence in your mind that you're someone who does what you say you'll do. You start trusting yourself more. You stop looking for external validation. You stop needing to feel motivated because you've made a decision to live by principle, not by preference. People who depend on feelings chase short-term pleasure. People who live by decisions chase long-term purpose. One path leads to temporary comfort. The other leads to lasting fulfillment. The moment you start letting your emotions dictate your effort, you lose your power. But when you let your decisions dictate your emotions, you regain control. You start shaping your state instead of being shaped by it. You start acting from your higher self instead of your temporary mood. Success is not emotional, it's intentional. It doesn't care if you're tired, if you're sad, if you're frustrated. It rewards those who act despite all of it. Every successful person has felt fear, doubt, and exhaustion. They've all had moments when they didn't feel like showing up. The difference is they decided to do it anyway. They made a decision once and they kept living it every day. They didn't have to keep deciding. Their choice became who they are. That's why they're consistent, because they don't debate with themselves every morning about whether or not they'll show up. The decision was already made. The truth is, emotions are meant to be felt, not followed. Feel them, acknowledge them, but don't let them lead your life. If you let your emotions lead, they'll take you wherever they want to go, and it won't be where you're supposed to be. But if you let your decisions lead, your emotions will eventually follow your purpose. You'll start to feel good because you're doing what matters, not the other way around. That's how real growth feels. It's not always comfortable, but it's always aligned. Every breakthrough begins with a single decision. A decision to stop settling. A decision to stop waiting. A decision to stop allowing fear to dictate your moves. When you decide to go all in, the universe responds. Doors open, opportunities appear, strength emerges. Not because the path suddenly gets easier, but because you get stronger. That strength doesn't come from hype or external validation. It comes from commitment. A decision backed by action creates power that emotion never can. When you decide, you take responsibility. You stop blaming the past, the system, the people around you. You stop saying, I can't, and start asking, how can I? You stop living by reactions and start living by intentions. That's how you become unshakable. Because life will test you. It will challenge your patience, your belief, your consistency. There will be moments that break your heart, moments that make you question everything. But when your decisions are rooted in purpose, you'll keep going through every storm because you're not guided by feelings. You're guided by direction. The mind loves comfort, but growth demands discomfort. Feelings will beg you to play it safe, but decisions will lead you toward expansion. Every time you choose to move forward instead of giving into fear, you rewire your brain. You teach yourself that courage is stronger than comfort, that progress is greater than perfection, that action is louder than emotion. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who reacts to the world, but as someone who creates it. The distance between where you are and where you want to be is one decision away. That decision might be uncomfortable. It might require sacrifice. It might demand consistency, but it's the bridge to everything you desire. Waiting to feel ready keeps you stuck, but deciding to act creates momentum. Waiting for inspiration keeps you still, but deciding to show up builds discipline. Waiting for motivation keeps you trapped in thought, but deciding to execute brings transformation. Every time you act from feeling, you feed your weakness. Every time you act from decision, you feed your strength. The people who create extraordinary lives aren't necessarily smarter or luckier. They've just mastered the art of deciding faster, acting sooner, and staying consistent longer. They don't wait for the right time because they know the right time is created by action, not by emotion. They move first and let the feelings catch up later. When you start living by decision, you stop chasing balance and start creating alignment. You stop needing to feel confident and start acting confidently. You stop needing validation and start validating yourself through consistency. You realize that the most powerful thing you can ever do is decide who you're going to be and then live that decision every single day, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Consistency builds what motivation can't sustain. Motivation can spark an idea. It can ignite a fire inside you. It can push you to take the first step, but it's consistency that keeps you moving when that fire dies down. Motivation is emotion-based. It rises and falls with your energy and your mood, but consistency is built on commitment, on discipline, on the quiet choice to show up every single day, no matter what you feel like. That's the secret difference between people who dream and people who achieve. Dreamers move when they're inspired. Achievers move because they've decided there's no other option. Consistency isn't glamorous. It's not loud. It's not filled with excitement or praise. It's repetitive. It's often boring. It's the daily grind of doing what needs to be done when no one's watching, when the results aren't immediate, when you're tired, when you'd rather quit. But it's in those repetitive moments that growth happens. Every repetition, every small step, every choice to keep going when you don't see progress, it compounds. It stacks up quietly until one day the results appear and everyone calls it success, but you'll know it was consistency all along. People often think success comes from huge breakthroughs, from one big moment that changes everything, but that's a lie. Success comes from hundreds of small actions, repeated day after day. It's not built in intensity, it's built in repetition. Anyone can give their all for a day, a week, or a month, but very few can sustain the same effort for years. That's why consistency is rare. Because it requires patience. It requires faith that the process is working even when the results haven't shown up yet. Motivation fades when results are slow, but consistency keeps you steady through the silence. There will be days when you question yourself, when you wonder if it's worth it, when you feel like nothing is changing, but those are the days that define you. Because if you can keep showing up when it's not exciting, when no one's cheering, when no one notices, you've already won. You've already separated yourself from the majority. Consistency builds momentum, and momentum builds mastery. Once you have momentum, progress becomes natural. You don't have to force it anymore. It becomes who you are. Every skill, every habit, every transformation is built through consistency. You can't go to the gym once and expect to be strong. You can't read one book and expect to be wise. You can't work hard for a week and expect to be successful. Real growth demands repetition. It demands commitment beyond emotion. It demands the decision to keep showing up even when you don't feel like it. Consistency doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for persistence. It's not about doing everything right. It's about not giving up when things go wrong. Motivation creates motion, but consistency creates direction. Motivation can push you forward, but consistency keeps you aligned. The people who depend on motivation keep restarting. The people who build consistency keep progressing. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken your identity. Every time you keep one, you strengthen it. Consistency is not just about results. It's about trust. When you're consistent, you build trust with yourself. You prove that your word means something, that your actions match your intentions, that you can rely on you. Without consistency, motivation turns into frustration. You'll start things but never finish them. You'll chase highs and then crash when they fade. You'll keep looking for the next big thing to get you excited again. But excitement without consistency is a trap. It gives you the illusion of progress without the reality of results. That's why consistency is more powerful than any motivational speech, book, or video. It's the act of doing what motivation talks about. It's the proof behind the promise. Consistency doesn't mean doing everything at once. It means doing something every day. Small, steady steps in the right direction build unstoppable momentum. 1% better each day doesn't look like much in the beginning, but over time it transforms your life. That's how habits are formed, how confidence is built, how results are earned. You can't fake consistency. You either show up or you don't. You either put in the reps or you don't. And life always rewards the ones who do. The reason most people fail isn't lack of talent. It's lack of consistency. They give up too soon. They expect instant gratification in a world that rewards patience. But the universe doesn't pay out to those who start. It pays out to those who endure. The person who trains every day, studies every day, creates every day, works every day, becomes unstoppable not because they were more motivated, but because they were more consistent. Consistency builds character. It teaches you patience, resilience, and focus. It forces you to confront boredom and push past it. It shapes your mindset because you start realizing that greatness isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things repeatedly. Every day you show up, you reinforce the belief that you're capable. Every day you take action, you strengthen the neural pathways in your brain that associate effort with reward. Over time, this becomes who you are. Consistency rewires your identity. Motivation lives in the moment, but consistency lives in your habits. When something becomes a habit, you no longer have to think about it. It becomes automatic. That's the ultimate goal, to build systems that carry you even when motivation disappears. To create structure that protects your progress. To have routines that make success inevitable because you've removed the need for emotion. Motivation asks, do I feel like it today? Consistency says, it's who I am. I do this every day. The consistency is also about self-respect. When you stay consistent, you're telling yourself that your goals matter, that your promises are worth keeping, that your future is worth the effort. Every time you show up, you're proving to yourself that you're capable of discipline. That's why people who live with consistency develop quiet confidence. They don't need to talk about what they're doing. They don't need validation. Their results speak for them. There's something powerful about the person who keeps showing up. They move differently. They think differently. They don't get rattled by setbacks because they've trained their mind to focus on progress, not perfection. They understand that one bad day doesn't define them because consistency isn't about never failing. It's about never staying down. It's about coming back every time. It's about recommitting every morning, no matter what happened yesterday. Consistency builds momentum, and momentum builds faith. Once you start stacking wins, even small ones, you start believing that bigger wins are possible. That belief fuels action, and that action fuels results. It becomes a cycle of growth that keeps expanding as long as you keep showing up. Motivation might get you started, but consistency builds the life you want. The truth is, motivation will always fade, but consistency turns effort into identity. It transforms discipline into freedom. It turns daily action into destiny. When you stay consistent, you no longer chase motivation. You become the kind of person who doesn't need it because your habits carry you forward regardless of how you feel. Progress happens when you act without emotion. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for the perfect moment to act, waiting to feel ready, waiting for the right level of motivation, but that moment never truly arrives. The truth is, emotions are unreliable. They fluctuate with your mood, your environment, your energy levels, and even the opinions of others. If you base your actions on emotion, you'll live in inconsistency because emotions are not built for stability. Progress doesn't care how you feel. The world doesn't stop for your emotions. Success isn't waiting for you to feel inspired, confident, or comfortable. It rewards the ones who take action regardless of how they feel, because that's what separates intention from execution. Acting without emotion doesn't mean becoming cold or robotic. It means becoming grounded. It means learning to do what needs to be done even when your emotions are pulling you in the opposite direction. Your feelings will often try to protect you from discomfort, from failure, from risk. They'll whisper that you're not ready, that it's too hard, that maybe tomorrow will be a better time. But tomorrow is a trap. Tomorrow is where dreams go to die. The people who make real progress are the ones who act today, despite fear, despite doubt, despite discomfort. They've learned that the emotion doesn't have to disappear before they move. They move, and the emotion follows. The reason emotions are so powerful is because they're tied to survival. Your brain is wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. So when something feels uncomfortable, your emotions try to pull you away from it. But growth only exists in discomfort. The gym isn't comfortable. Learning new skills isn't comfortable. Building a business, healing from pain, or changing your life isn't comfortable. The emotions that come with fear, resistance, and uncertainty are natural, but they don't define what you're capable of. The difference between staying stuck and moving forward is the ability to act even when those emotions are present. When you act without emotion, you take back your power. You stop reacting and start leading. You stop letting moods control your movement. You stop waiting to feel courageous and start becoming courageous through action. Every time you act without emotion, you prove to yourself that you can operate from principle instead of impulse. That's where self-mastery begins. You stop being controlled by the waves of how you feel and start steering the ship toward where you want to go. The people who win in life are not those who feel the best every day. They're the ones who act with the most consistency, no matter how they feel. Think about it. How many times have you felt unmotivated to do something but forced yourself anyway and afterward felt proud, fulfilled, energized? That's the paradox. The feeling you're waiting for doesn't come before action. It comes after it. You don't feel confident and then you act. And then you feel confident. You don't feel strong and then show up. You show up, and that builds strength. Waiting for emotion is waiting for permission, and life doesn't give permission. It gives results to those who move without needing the perfect emotional state. Progress is built on motion, not emotion. Motion breaks inertia. When you take the first step, even a small one, you begin to shift your energy. You interrupt the cycle of hesitation. You silence the inner critic that thrives on inaction. Your mind loves patterns, and if your pattern is waiting until you feel ready, you'll train yourself to delay progress. But if you make your new pattern taking action regardless of feeling, you rewire your brain for success. You start to associate discomfort with growth. You start to see fear as a signal to move forward, not to retreat. That's when momentum begins. Acting without emotion also sharpens your focus. When you remove the emotional noise, you can see clearly what needs to be done. You're not overwhelmed by doubt or distraction because you've decided that your purpose is louder than your feelings. You move from reacting to responding. You stop being a victim of your own internal chaos and become the architect of your direction. You learn to separate what you want now from what you want most, and that's one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop. Emotions are temporary, but the consequences of letting them control you are lasting. If you give in to fear, you stay stuck. If you give in to laziness, you lose momentum. If you give in to doubt, you never see what you're truly capable of. But if you act through those emotions, something shifts inside you. You realize that fear doesn't stop you. You stop yourself. You realize that hesitation is an illusion created by overthinking. You realize that the emotional resistance is just the threshold to a higher version of yourself. Every time you push through it, that threshold moves higher, and so does your capacity for progress. Progress is built through repetition, and repetition demands neutrality. You can't rely on emotion to fuel you every day. There will be days when you feel empty, when your mind says, not today. But those are the days that count most. When you act on those days, you train yourself to move regardless of your internal weather. You create a foundation that doesn't shake when emotion does. That's why progress often feels quiet. It's not a burst of energy, it's a steady climb. It's doing what's required over and over, without drama, without excuses. The people who achieve lasting success have learned emotional neutrality. They've learned that feelings are visitors. They come and go, but discipline is permanent. They don't suppress emotion. They acknowledge it, but they don't obey it. They know that emotion is feedback, not a command. They use emotion to inform them, not to control them. They act from commitment, not comfort. They understand that progress is a product of choices, not moods. That's why they can keep showing up even when they're exhausted, uninspired, or frustrated, because they've learned that the act itself is what creates the breakthrough, not the feeling behind it. When you act without emotion, you also become more resilient. You stop seeing temporary failure as permanent defeat. You stop letting disappointment define you. You begin to understand that emotion doesn't predict outcome. You can feel scared and still succeed. You can feel unready and still win. You can feel uncertain and still take the leap. The emotion doesn't disqualify you. It's part of the process. Progress happens when you move through it instead of waiting for it to pass. Most people let their emotions build walls around them. They let fear keep them from starting. They let doubt keep them from finishing. They let pride keep them from learning. But when you decide to act without emotion, you break through those walls. You stop waiting to feel brave and start being brave through behavior. You learn that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's movement in spite of it. Every action you take without emotion strengthens your willpower, your focus, your inner stability. The more you act without emotion, the more you detach from the outcome. You start focusing on the process, on showing up, on doing your best in the moment. That's when real mastery begins. Because progress isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. It's not about feeling good every day, it's about doing good every day. The work you do when you don't feel like it becomes the foundation of the person you become. It's the unseen, emotionless consistency that transforms your life in silence. Acting without emotion doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've chosen to lead with logic, with purpose, with alignment. It means your vision is stronger than your mood. It means you understand that feelings are passengers on the journey, but they don't get to steer the wheel. When you make that shift, progress becomes inevitable because nothing can stop someone who acts regardless of emotion. They become unstoppable not because they feel powerful every day, but because they act powerfully every day, no matter how they feel. Mastery comes from showing up, not feeling inspired. Inspiration is beautiful, but it's fleeting. It comes in waves, often triggered by something outside of you, a story, a song, a speech, a moment of clarity. It makes you feel alive for a while, convinced that you're capable of more. But the truth is, inspiration fades as quickly as it arrives, and if you build your actions on it, you'll always find yourself starting over every time it disappears. The real difference between those who wish and those who win is simple. They keep showing up. They understand that mastery isn't born in the moments of inspiration. It's forged in the moments when you don't want to do the work, but do it anyway. Every great performer, athlete, artist, leader, or creator knows that inspiration doesn't show up every day, but discipline can. They've learned to detach from the emotional high of motivation and instead commit to the process. They don't rely on the mood to move them. They rely on the mission that drives them. That's where mastery begins. It's not about one big moment of brilliance. It's about thousands of moments of commitment, repetition, and refinement. It's about doing the same thing over and over until you no longer think about it. You become it. Showing up when you don't feel like it is the true test of growth. Anyone can take action when they're excited, when the environment is right, when everything feels good. But what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary is the willingness to act when it's hard, when it's dull, when there's no applause, when the outcome is uncertain, because that's the place where mastery is built. The grind, the repetition, the consistency, these are the invisible bricks of greatness. They're not glamorous, they're not exciting, but they're what build your foundation so strong that nothing can shake it. You don't learn mastery by thinking about it or by waiting for inspiration to strike. You learn by doing, by making mistakes, by refining your craft one day at a time. Inspiration might give you the courage to start, but showing up gives you the wisdom to continue. Every day you show up, even in small ways, you're teaching your mind discipline. You're building habits that operate without emotion. You're strengthening your belief that you can rely on yourself. That's what mastery really is. Trust in yourself, earned through consistent action. When you only act on inspiration, you become addicted to the high of feeling ready. You chase it like a drug, always waiting for that next hit of motivation before you move. But the people who create extraordinary results don't wait for the feeling, they create it. They understand that emotion follows motion. That means once you start moving, once you take action, once you begin doing, the energy you need will catch up to you. Waiting to feel inspired before you act is like waiting for the tide before you swim. You don't wait, you jump in, and the momentum builds from there. Mastery is built in silence. It's built in the moments when no one's watching, when there's no recognition, when the work feels endless and thankless. It's built through repetition that most people would find boring. But the masters embrace that boredom because they know it's where greatness lives. They know that the repetitive motion of daily improvement creates results that last forever. Every single rep, every single tray, every single day of showing up stacks into something powerful. It's not what you do once that defines you. It's what you do consistently over time. When you show up without inspiration, you're training more than your body or your skill. You're training your mind. You're teaching yourself resilience, grit, and focus. You're developing a muscle that most people never build, the ability to move forward without emotional permission. And once you master that, you become unstoppable because you're no longer waiting for conditions to be perfect. You create your own momentum. You become a self-starter. a force that can't be slowed down by mood swings or temporary lack of motivation. The truth about mastery is that it's not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's not about how talented you are. It's about how long you're willing to keep going after others stop. Most people give up not because they lack ability, but because they lack consistency. They stop when inspiration fades, when progress feels slow, when effort outweighs reward. But the ones who reach mastery don't measure progress by emotion. They measure it by effort. They know that every small improvement counts, that every step forward matters, that progress, no matter how invisible, is still progress. When you show up every day, you build momentum, and momentum is the most powerful force you can create. Once you have momentum, everything becomes easier. It's no longer about forcing yourself to do the work. It becomes natural. You wake up and do it because it's who you are now, not something you have to think about. That's the transformation consistency creates. It turns discipline into identity. You stop trying to become great and start being great through the habits you've built. Inspiration fades in the face of challenge, but mastery thrives on it. Challenges are what shape you. Every obstacle you face teaches you something new about your limits, your patience, your resilience. Inspiration can make you believe in your potential, but showing up makes you prove it. Every time you do the work without the feeling, you're building evidence that you can rely on yourself. And that's the foundation of unshakable confidence, the kind that doesn't depend on how you feel, but on who you've become through repetition. Mastery is not built by chasing emotions, but by creating systems. Systems that remove choice, that make the right action automatic. You don't ask yourself if you're inspired to show up. You've already decided that showing up is non-negotiable. It's what you do, no matter how you feel. You've designed your environment, your routines, your standards in a way that eliminates the need for motivation. That's why the best in any field don't seem to struggle with consistency. They've built systems that support it. They don't fight their emotions every day. They've structured their lives so the right behavior happens naturally. When you rely on inspiration, you give away your power to external forces. But when you rely on showing up, you take your power back. You become independent of mood, weather, opinions, or circumstances. You stop needing inspiration because your identity has shifted. You're no longer someone trying to be disciplined. You're someone who is disciplined. You no longer chase success. You attract it through who you've become. That's what mastery looks like. It's quiet, grounded, unshakable. Every time you show up without inspiration, you're building a deeper connection with your purpose. You're proving to yourself that what you're pursuing is worth the effort, worth the pain, worth the repetition. You start realizing that success isn't about the big moments. It's about the daily ones. It's about choosing progress over perfection, discipline over desire, and purpose over pleasure. Mastery is the reward for those who refuse to quit, who keep showing up, who keep refining their craft until excellence becomes second nature. Inspiration is a visitor, but consistency is a resident. Inspiration knocks, but consistency builds the house. Inspiration might start the journey, but showing up every day is what completes it. Every great achievement, every extraordinary performance, every life-changing result began with someone who chose to show up again and again long after the feeling faded. Because mastery doesn't come to those who wait for inspiration. It comes to those who act in its absence.